The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Brad Spates, Guide Technologies. Thank you all for registering and attending our first of our several XA webinar series. The very first webinar is today, and it's an overview of the Guide products. Randy Kenny, who manages that, the developments and the development of those products, will be doing the presentation. Just a couple housekeeping notes. Everybody will be on mute during the presentation. Please utilize the chat feature if you have questions. This session will be recorded, and it will be available on the Guide website after a few days afterwards. And then we'll also send a link to everybody that registered with the information, with the broadcast, along with the Q&As that come in through the chat box that we'll answer and distribute those along with the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Randy Kenny.
All right, thanks, Brad. I probably know most of you on the call from working with you on projects or conferences or whatnot, but thanks for joining, and good afternoon. I guess good morning if you're on the West Coast. But I guess just to add to Brad, if you don't know, prior to joining Guide 8 years ago, I worked with a customer for 22 years, a variety of different functions, and they had XA in use from the 1980s. So I've been around the XA product for about 30 years, dating myself here, but from Apex 1 in 2 days all the way through to today. With that, for today's session, what we're looking to do is just to give you an idea of the 3 products in particular. Due to time limits, we could spend an hour easily on each one of these. And if any of these are interest, we can certainly set up personalized demos with you and go through it in a lot more detail. What I'm trying to do today is really just kind of give you a flavor and a feel for what each of these do and how it has helped other customers, and hopefully you'll see the value and how it might be able to help you and want to take it to the next step. So just from an agenda, I'm going to start with just one slide on kind of background of Guide products, how they've come about, and some of the philosophy we use when we decided to make something a Guide product. We're going to cover specifically our System Link Toolkit first. I'm going to walk through an example of how we can take an Excel spreadsheet and map the columns in that spreadsheet to the objects and attributes in XA, files and fields equivalent, and then update XA with the data from the Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to do that with 0 coding. So it's just a mapping exercise. So we'll kind of walk through that. And then we'll cover scan and track. And on each of these, I'll give you a little bit of an overview, but then we'll get into the meat of it. I'm going to show you some screenshots on that just so you get the look and feel of it. Since we're not doing a live demo, but you can kind of see what it looks like and how you interact with it. And then on that one, we're going to walk through a customer case study. We've got lots and lots of customer case studies out there, but I had to pick one. So I picked one that I thought would be most universal to the audience, or to really anyone using XA. It's around purchase receiving and getting material from the dock to where it needs to be, either in the shop floor or to a stock location, and keeping visibility to that. So we kind of go through what their current state was and then what we did when we implemented scan and track. And then lastly, our analytics toolkit, we call it ATX, which if you're looking to do any kind of business intelligence initiative and you're an XA ERP user, this is probably something you're definitely going to want to look at, because it will really shorten your time frame to getting your BI tool up and running by transforming, your ERP database, which is obviously transactional related data, lots and lots of data. But for BI to work with it, you got to get it into a star schema format. So we'll kind of go through what that toolkit does and how it works. So, and as Brad said, don't be bashful. Use the chat box, put any questions in there, and we will address them and send it out when we send the recording link. So with that, there we go. So just a little bit of background here. Every guide product, we originally developed it due to a customer need that we saw out there. And obviously there was no standard Infor XA solution. It didn't exist on the roadmap that we knew of. And pretty much every product we've developed is still has not been addressed specifically by an Infor solution. So they're still relevant. But that's always where it originates is, customer has a need and we look at it and we say, well, okay, is this a one-off with this customer, or is it something we want to develop into a product to be used by other customers? So over the past 10 years or so that we've been doing this, several of these have really developed into very robust enterprise level solutions, and including the three that we're going to look at today. Really, our driving principles behind it is, number one, we always try to use the latest technologies and also look towards, not locking you in on future upgrades. So, we want to make sure that your path to upgrade XA in the future is clear, and none of the products that you'd be purchasing would interfere with that. So there's ways to do that, specifically using the Infor supported system link or building things in integrator is going to guarantee that you're not going to have any issues going forward on future upgrades. We do work very closely with our customers on features and functions. In fact, I would say many of the really great features and functions have come from our customers, and as we work through with them on implementations and so forth. And if we decide to take an idea and make it part of the base product, we don't charge the customer. We'll work on it from an R&D standpoint because we know we're going to build it into the base product to be reused by other customers. So we always try to work with you guys as we implement it and make it even better. And then lastly, we really try to keep the pricing fair. Try to price it at a value that when you see a demo of it and you understand what your business needs are, that the very next thing you're going to ask after a demo is, well, what does it cost? So we try to keep it fair so there's no sticker shock. We don't up the price 30% with an idea to discount it. We try to just really price it at a fair value and where you get the value out of it. Okay, so with that, let's start with System Link Toolkit. Just some background. As you probably know, System Link is the third leg of the stool that makes up integrator. So you've got PowerLink, which is your Windows-based client user interface. You've got NetLink, which is your browser-based user interface. And then you've got System Link, which is Infor's supported solution for other systems, third-party systems, even Excel spreadsheets, whatever, to interface to the XA database. The issue there is that System Link's language is XML. Traditionally, most XA shops have RPG developers because that's what all the green screen stuff was written in. So one of the goals with the toolkit when we set out is how can we make it easier for RPG developers to use System Link without having to have any XML knowledge. So one of the things the toolkit does is it will take your data inputs and convert that and make it into a request that we can send to System Link in XML, and then take the response that comes back from System Link also in XML and parse that out so we can look through it and see, are there any errors that need to be addressed? Did it, or was it successful? And so that's what the system with the toolkit, you don't have to have any XML knowledge to utilize System Link. We can do things like group logical objects, so you don't get half-baked orders into the system. You want an order header and all the related line items or ship tos or special charges, whatever it's related to that, to either be fully successful or not. So we can group those as a single request and make sure you don't get half an order in the system as an example. We've also got customers that do very large numbers of transactions, in the hundreds of thousands. They've got EDI orders coming in 24/7, and they need to get those into XA in a reasonable and timely fashion. So they use the toolkit, and we can process that number of transactions by breaking it down into queues. So you can set up these queues in the toolkit, and behind the scenes, then we'll create the related data queue and the monitors on the iSeries to handle the processing of that data. Error management, this is a big one. So, that's one of the hard things with SystemLink is, you have to have some kind of a tool, some kind of a way to manage the responses coming back. Well, we'd like to think there's never any errors. There always are errors, and you got to have a way to manage that. So with the toolkit, we parse through all that. We show you in PowerLink views if there were any errors. You can drill into it. You can see what the errors are and know how to go fix it and then resubmit that job back through. So, and it's easy enough via PowerLink for the users to be able to do it. Sometimes, depending on the culture of your company, as soon as a user sees an error, they're going to go crying to IT. But in either case, the important thing is that it tells you that there's an error and makes it easy to go find what it is and how to fix it. And then lastly, as I'm sure you're aware, offline loads eventually are going to be completely gone when green screen is gone. They're really not supported at all by Infor now, even though a lot of them are still out there because they haven't replaced the functionality in SystemLink. But for those that are using offline loads, we do have an optional add-on module. You don't have to purchase it, but if you're using offline loads, we can then translate that. So instead of processing them through the green screen functions that could be gone, at any release level from Infor, you can do them through the toolkit. So, and using SystemLink. So it's fully supported going forward from an Infor standpoint. All right, so let's get into how to map and execute a spreadsheet load with zero coding required. First of all, when you purchase the toolkit and install it, you're going to get an application card here, just like your other application cards in PowerLink, and it's going to have a whole bunch of objects associated with it. Due to what we're going to do today, we're really only going to use a couple of the objects here, but there's a lot of things you can do here within the toolkit. What we're going to do today is we're going to take a set of item revisions. So I've got just a subset here of 10 items for ease of demo purposes. And what we're going to do is change these last two columns here. You can see right now the type is guide and tagged is no. And we're going to change those to different values. If we drill into that view, what you're going to see is that those two columns are represented by two user fields that are in the item revision. And those are the fields that we're going to map to in the mapping from the spreadsheet. So we're going to take those, and we've got a spreadsheet here, and it's got 5 columns, and the last 2 here represent the data that we're going to change. So we're going to change guide to demo, and we're going to change this Boolean value from no, a 0, to 1, a yes. And first thing we have to do is create the mapping. So what we do is we go in and create an object in the toolkit, and in that object, we set up this mapping. So here you've got the columns, and this is the item revision domain class, and these are attributes within that. So we're going to take this spreadsheet. We got columns A through E. You can see we've set them up here. So this is the spreadsheet columns to the attribute that we're going to either use as a key field. So in this case, site, item, and revision, as you can see, are the key fields to get to that record. And then these are the 2 columns that we're going to update with these values. All right, so what we first have to do to make that happen after we create the object, and we actually create a load setting that kind of ties it all together as well. But once we've got it set up, we're going to create a group. And a group is how you're going to, the data essentially that you want to update. And you can, this is showing all records, all groups, but you can filter this to individual users or departments, what have you, so that only those individuals can see their groups. And they can get notifications if there's errors and other things via email or text if you want to go to that level. So we could manually create that group and then hit a button to process it. But we've got even a slicker way of doing it. And what we have here is a shared IFS folder, and I've created a shortcut on the desktop to that folder. And we've got a monitor on it from the from System Link Toolkit. So what happens, we're going to take that spreadsheet I just showed you. We're just going to drag and drop it to this folder. And then there's a monitor watching this, and as soon as a new spreadsheet is put here, it's going to automatically take it and create that group and start processing it right away. And you'd be able to see this in the groups list view that I was just showing you. It'll process it, and as soon as it's done processing, we're going to see, voila, that the columns have indeed changed to the values from that spreadsheet. That's it, no coding needed. We just created the mapping and the fields were updated. So another thing, we can drill into the group, and there's a lot of things you can see here. I mean, it logs everything, and this is a pretty simplistic one for demo purposes, but you can actually go into the group too and see the XML. You don't have to look at this, but it's there. So it shows, you know, from the mapping that we did, the actual XML request that it created and sent to System Link. And then you can also look at the response. In this case, I just pulled one that showed an error, so you can kind of see that it does highlight if there is an error here. But you wouldn't go here to see if there's an error. There's actually a tab right here called errors, and it would show it to you in red, and it would show all 10 of those records, and if any of them were an error, it would be highlighted in red. You can drill into it, see exactly what the error is, and know how to go fix it and resubmit the job. And if you resubmit it, it already knows the ones that process it successfully. It'll only go after the ones that were an error and process that one. So it's pretty slick. So that's a pretty simplistic one that I just showed you. Here's one that's a little more complex, where we can actually designate in column A here what a header record is for a header and detail type situation, and then the line items. And so you would have a mapping, you know, based on this value for columns B through G here, and you'd say what attribute, this is a header record, you know, what attributes is it associated with. And then for line items, columns C and D would represent the data that we're going to create for the line items. And in this example, there's just 3 different ones. So you don't have to map every column. It'll only bring in the ones that you do map. You could have a spreadsheet of, you know, 30 different columns, but only want to update, you know, maybe if you're doing price updates or something, there's only 5 or 6 of those columns that you're interested in. So it's just what you map is what's going to get updated when you run that. There's a lot of functionality behind that. You can do adds, you can do add if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, update. You can do delete records. I mean, there's a lot of functionality that in a you know, longer demo we can certainly get into. We've used this toolkit. I mean, many customers of ours have it. We did one particular project where a customer had purchased another company. They were running SAP, and we were migrating that company off of SAP to XA. And all of the data migration we did was through the toolkit. We had different worksheets in a workbook that represented, you know, one represented customers, another one vendors, then we had items and bombs and routings. And so they were all separate worksheets, but within a single workbook. So we could use Excel to kind of manipulate the data as we went through multiple passes of this migration and just kind of rerun those. We had done the mappings to get it into an XA database and make sure it all works. So we haven't really had any requirement from a data standpoint that a customer's thrown at us that we've not been able to accommodate through the toolkit. It's very flexible, very powerful. Okay, so just a quick summary here on the toolkit. Basically, it provides what I like to call a management console to help you manage, you know, monitor and optimize the use of System Link. You know, System Link's been around for a long time, probably 20 plus years, I think. The problem has always been, how do you manage those requests and then the responses coming back? You got to have some way of doing that. And that's what the toolkit does if you haven't built those types of utilities yourself. We do have some pre-built shell programs that really kind of help you get up and running quickly using the toolkit. As I mentioned, we have a optional add-on module we call it XA import tools, but if you're using offline loads, you can get off of those and start using SystemLink. And then we recommend 3 days at the start of the project just to provide some training, some setup, and what we like to do is work with you on a particular project you have. Maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet load, something that you want to put into production, work with you on getting it up and running and test, and then show you how to, you can just export and import from your test environment to your production environment. So you can ramp up quickly and have something that you can show immediate value with a real world project. Okay, so that's it on SystemLink Toolkit. I know short and sweet, but again, on any of these, we can get into a lot more detail if of interest. Let's talk about Scan and Track. So Scan and Track is a mobile front end to XA transactions. Think about it that way. One of our customers, CIO there, after implementing it, said, it really provides feet to XA. It allows you to do what you would normally have to sit at a terminal and do, but do it in a mobile fashion. So we support pretty much all the there's a few obscure transactions that we've not run across customers doing, but anything that, for the most part, you're doing from an inventory or labor standpoint, Scan and Track will be able to handle it. We do have full support for pick, pack, shipping, and even invoicing. And the key distinction here is that as in green screen. So, as you probably know, green screen is a lot more functional from what you can do in this area when it comes to partial shipments and things like that. So we made an intentional design decision early on to say, we want to emulate that functionality because that's more robust. That's what customers are used to being able to do. And as you probably know, if you've tried to do the equivalent functions in PowerLink, it's very limited what you can do in PowerLink. You can do some things, but it's got a long way to go. So we wanted to make sure we emulated the functions in green screen. We also have full support for paperless physical inventory and cycle counting. So it works, seamlessly with your count groups and materials management. But instead of having to, go back and enter your counts at a terminal or writing things down on a count sheet or whatever, you can do the same functionality in a mobile paperless format through Scan and Track. And if you do blind counts, we actually have configuration options to allow you to do that as well. So a lot of capability there if that's of interest. Special note, we are 100% SystemLink based. That's what the transaction engine is behind everything we do in Scan and Track. So as we mentioned, it's just as if they're sitting in PowerLink, or we also do the green screen transactions. And if you were to get an error back or a warning back in PowerLink, you're going to get the same error or warning back in Scan and Track. So it's real-time transaction verification, and if it passes the edits, it's real-time posting. It's incredibly quick, even if you're in a global environment. So because we're SystemLink based, we have to make sure that SystemLink is always on. So we're constantly within Scan and Track making sure we have a detection method, just that it scans and makes sure SystemLink is available. And if it, for whatever reason, it's not, we've got some auto recovery mechanisms built in. Usually it's just a matter of restarting the SystemLink services, SLS, via Link Manager. So we do that automatically. We don't just say, hey, SystemLink's down, we can't operate. We'll automatically go into recovery mode. Usually takes less than a minute, less than 30 seconds in many cases. And to the user, they probably never would even know that there was an issue. It just kind of auto heals itself, if you will. So that's a nice feature. And actually in the later releases of XA, this isn't as big of an issue. It was more so in some of the earlier releases that it would just kind of get hosed up every once in a while. And the only way to fix it was to go and restart the services. So we do that automatically kind of behind the scenes. It's a browser-based interface, so there's no client installs that you have to do. From any device, you can run it as long as you can put a URL into a browser. So from tablets or smartphones, or obviously laptops and desktops, from any browser. Typically, this is a barcode scanning device that has the screen on it, connected to Wi-Fi or something along those lines. So licensing is by concurrent device, not by user. So that means no additional XA user licenses are needed. And we have a lot of customers that run pretty tight on those XA licenses, so that's a nice feature for them. So we do have a couple add-on modules. So, it's part of the base package. You're going to be able to do, all the normal transactions that you can do in XA, pick, pack, and ship, and the physical inventory and cycle counting. Those are things that pretty much everyone does, so they're in the base product. But then from an add-on standpoint, we do have a module called Pallet Track. And if you do anything with pallets, this might be of interest. It really manages everything from beginning to end, from initial buildup of pallets, either coming off a production line, cases that you're putting onto a pallet and then shrink wrapping and need a license plate that represents what's on that pallet, or coming in from purchasing, if they come in on pallets, or if they come in cases or whatever unit of measure and you need to put them on pallets. We've got the ability to manage that from that initial buildup all the way through warehouse movements and through picking and shipping to customer orders. Another add-on module is what we call Intelligent Wizards, or iWizards, and this is really around MO processing at an operation level. So tracking labor, if you do crew clocking or anything like that, quality and scrap material issue, back flushing. And it's at an operation level, and then at the end, you get to the last operation, we take you to an RM so you can receive that MO. And really what it does is it, as you can imagine, just provides much better WIP visibility. So you know exactly where things are at an operation level, provides crew badge integrity if that's something you need to do, and just provides an intelligent display and walkthrough of data, and does its own editing to match up ons and offs and things like that, so that when you get to select and edit processing for that, you're not going to have any errors. It's just going to process all of that information. Okay, and then when we implement something like Scan and Track, this is really a time where you're going to get process improvements. So we want to look at how do you do things today. And in the case study, this is exactly what I'm going to show you. How do you do it today? Where are areas we can improve, and really design a solution with you to get some good ROI out of the implementation. Because of the architecture, we can pretty easily personalize the solution to fit exactly what your business needs are by process area. Things like label designs, what data you want to capture, even if it's outside of XA. We can capture data based on what your needs are, how you want the screens to flow. You can add additional edits if you wanted to on the data that we're capturing via Scan and Track before it even hits XA, if that's something that you need to do. So this is a process we go through with every customer that implements Scan and Track. We do a discovery, we work closely with you on what you do today, how we want to do it in the future, and really map that out at the front end. We've got native barcode labeling and design capabilities within Scan and Track, but so you can print barcode labels or whatever, even if it doesn't have barcodes, right from Scan and Track, or we can interface to other systems. If you've got any of these listed, and that's what you're using for your labeling today, we can also interface with those. We've got an admin area in Scan and Track with a lot of things we can configure and tailor to determine how you want Scan and Track to work. One of the areas is you can create badge groups. So when someone logs in, they're going to log in with a badge, and then that's going to determine what transactions or what functions they see on the screen that comes up next. So if you've got users that are going to be doing similar type functions, it allows for a lot easier maintenance of people coming and going. We do have very flexible printing options for barcoding, if you use turnaround numbers, those are nice within XA. So we can work with you. Where do you need things to be printed? What do you need printed? How do you want it designed throughout your warehouse from the receiving docks all the way through the shipping docks. You may need different labels at different areas, but the idea is to print a label, get barcodes on it so that downstream transactions happen a lot more efficiently and accurately. All right, and then lastly here, we can work across, it truly is a global solution. I mean, across multiple physical locations, multiple I-series environments from a single scan and track install. And because it's concurrent licensing, that is across all of your physical locations. So if you had a warehouse or a plant on the West Coast and another one on the East Coast, one in Europe, you can take advantage of time zone differences. And you could have 50, 60 physical devices, but if only 30 people would ever be logged in at one particular time, then that's all you would need from a licensing standpoint of scan and track. Okay, so just some screenshots here so you kind of get a look and feel. First thing, when you go to the URL, you get a login screen. You put in the warehouse and your badge number and sign in, and then you would see the transactions that have been set up in the admin area that you have access to on the next screen. You can also change your location from here. So if you have access to multiple environments, you just hit this and you'd have a list of different XA environments, and you can easily switch to that before you log in. And then that's the environment that you're working with. So here's just some screenshots. This one is the RM transaction. It's got all the related information you would see if you were looking at a PowerLink screen or a green screen. And we can default a lot of these values if that makes sense. Basically just scan or enter an MO number or turnaround number, and it'll go and validate it and bring back the related data. You fill in the rest of it where needed, hit go, and you're going to get an RM transaction and IM hist almost immediately if it passed all the edits. So and then here's, if you do quality against manufacturing orders, here's the MQ transaction, same idea. But this MQ is only in green screen in XA today. So, but we've got it through scan and track. So you can see, whether it's in PowerLink or in green screen, you can have the same interface via scan and track to do these transactions. Another example with the purchase receipts. So it's smart enough to know if you scan a PO or a turnaround number, if you have the inspect on receipt flag set yes or no. If it's yes, then it's going to do an RI transaction. If it's no, it's going to do an RP transaction based on the information you put here. And then the same with the PQ, the purchase quality transaction. Again, this is only in green screen in XA, but via scan and track, you've got the same interface. Here's your standard ons and offs from PMC. If you're doing these, all these fields should look familiar, same functionality, but common, consistent interface. You don't have to flip back and forth. So then out of the box, this is another thing we provide. We provide 2 queries out of the box, but really the intent is to show you what you can do. Think of these like PowerLink views. So in this case, we're doing a location query. We enter or scan a location. It's going to come back and tell us every single item in that location, along with batch lot FIFO if you do any of that, quantity on hand, available status if you're doing QC transactions and so forth. And these column headings are all filterable and sortable, so very similar to what you could do in PowerLink. And as part of the implementation, we've got this location query, and then the next one here is an inventory query where you're putting, in this case, you're putting an item number in, and it's telling you all of the locations in your warehouse that item exists, along with, quantity on hand with totals and available QC status. And again, these are really to show if you had a need for someone on the floor to see information and you could create a PowerLink view, but they don't have PowerLink on their device, we can very easily do those same types of things through scan and track so they have easy access to the information they need. All right, so that gives you a little flavor of what it looks like. Let's talk about a customer where we implemented this. And the first thing we did was to look at their current state and what their process looked like. And it was a mess. They were they had so many different steps to get the material coming in this case it's a purchase material, to where it needed to be on the shop floor or in physical, stock location. And everywhere that you see these red boxes, these are all places where they lost visibility to that inventory, the inventory blind spots. So they would go through these. It was very haphazard, wasn't a lot of controls. People were doing things differently based on what they thought they should do. You can see they're doing RP transactions all over the place. And that, that can cause problems if you don't have control of the RP, because that's, tied into your accounting with invoice matching and so forth. So what we did is we said, all right, well, first of all, the metrics we had in place. So they had an average days from dock to stock. If it was a non-inspect item, it was taking them over 2 days to get to where it needed to be. If inspection was required, it was over 4 days. And in addition, there was places, as you can see here, where they lost visibility to that inventory during the process. So then we also identified where they're doing all of these RP transactions. We found 36 different workstations, 22 known individuals, or probably were more, that were doing these RPs, and everyone kind of had their own little different flavor of how to do it. So this was another thing as one of the goals that we really wanted to clean up as part of this implementation. So just an idea of annual volume, they had over 52,000 transactions a year that were items going to stock, and 20,000 that went through inspection. So pretty hefty volume. So here's what we designed. So after looking at all of that, said, all right, let's streamline this. First of all, we got to make sure we have visibility to the product from the time it hits the dock until it gets to where it needs to be. And we want to try to automate this and make it as efficient as possible. So the first thing, when the truck pulls into the receiving dock, they take the product off, they're going to do an RD transaction. In this case, they did the RD in PowerLink, but we print a label based on that RD. I'm going to show you the 2 examples on the next slide here, but we're going to print a label that's going to represent that receipt. And there's a barcode that has everything from the PO, the line item, the quantity, everything that was needed to know what it was that was received and where it needs to go. So we do the RD transaction, and then we look at the inspect on receipt flag from item revision. If it's set to yes, we're going to automatically do an RI transaction and label that product. They put it on a cart, and they're going to put the label on the product so that the person that's going to move that cart knows that it needs to go to inspection. If it's no, then we're going to do an RP transaction and put it on a cart with a label that doesn't need to go to inspection. So they had conveyance people every 15 minutes or so that were just walking the warehouse all day long and looking for these carts and then taking them to where they needed to be. So if it went to inspection, the next step was to do the PQ transaction. So again, through scan and track, they could do the PQ. They can report good quantity and anything that may have needed some extra work. And the extra work stuff went to a quarantine area. The good product went to a cart. So now it becomes just like the items that are on the carts from the RP. And these carts were set up as non-nettable locations in XA. So MRP wouldn't know anything about them yet, because sometimes that product needed to go somewhere on the shop floor to a line side location, other times into a stock location. So while it's in this process, we had complete visibility to where that product was at all times and what to do with it. And if once they got to where it needed to be, whether line side or stock location, then they would simply take the barcode that's on the label that had all the information about that receipt and scan that, and then they would scan the location they're putting it to, and that was it. In 2 scans, they had taken off that cart and put it in the location where it was needed. And in the background, we're doing a TW transaction in XA to move it from the cart to the put away location. So the whole idea here was they never lost visibility, greatly streamlined the number of transactions that had to be done. We had control of the RP transaction. and the results were quite good, as I'll show you here in a second. But first, here's the actual labels, just so you can kind of see. So when we did that RD transaction, we printed. The only difference between these is whether, clearly says here inspection required. So the guy that was doing the receiving knew what cart to put it on. But this barcode contained all the information about that receipt, the PO, the line, the item information, the quantity received, and so forth. So we knew exactly where it was at all times. So the results, we had a go live over a 2-week period. During that time, we had over 2,300 receipts. The goal was to get it to less than 24 hours from dock to put away. And what we were able to achieve is beforehand, for non-inspect items, it was over 2 days. And during those 2 weeks, we got it to under 6 hours to get it from dock to put away. And if items had inspection, it went from 4 days to about a little over 1 day. And very little errors occurred. We obviously did a lot of testing and so forth and made sure we were ready to go, but some fantastic results, and have gotten just even better since then. So this is the type of thing that, implementing something like this, we can really achieve business value for you, not just implementing a new solution to, put a mobile front end on top of transactions you do. So, we really look to improve the process along the way. So just to summarize this real quick, what you get with Scan and Track, you get a mobile, real-time, always-on inventory management solution. You get, the base functionality along with the add-on modules really help with process management and process improvements. You've got the pick, pack, and ship, no more green screen, yay, in the base product. You've got physical inventory and cycle counting in the base product. And then if interested, if you have the need, we've got pallet management as an add-on, and then these MO operation wizards we talked about. So you really get some very robust, flexible labeling all throughout your process, at the point that you need it. And it truly is a global solution that you can implement across multiple locations, and we can fit the business needs based on, what you need at a physical location or even a process area within a physical location. So that's Scan and Track. Moving on next to our analytics toolkit. So before we talk about ATX, we got to talk a little bit about Birst in business intelligence. Typically, what Birst is, if you don't know, is it provides, your dashboards, your KPIs. It summarizes information coming from your ERP system and gives you the graphs and things that the executives and business managers want to look at and be able to drill down into and do trend analysis and things like that. And typically what customers have done traditionally is you take your data out of your ERP system, you put it into Excel, you manipulate it, you do pivot tables, you do all kinds of stuff to get it into a summarized format, and then you create graphs. And you send these out once a month, or you review them in management meetings. There's really no easy way to just get that information out of your ERP system because it's transactional based. So Birst gives you all the tools to create KPIs and dashboards and do the drill downs and drill arounds, but it's got to be in a format that it can read. And that's really the key. You've got this business issue where you want to see all this information. You want it to be real time. Excel's not real time. That's going to be, someone's going to have to sit there and put it together, and probably on a monthly basis or so. So your ERP data is transaction based, as it should be, but it's not conducive for doing what executives are going to want to see through a BI tool. ERP has all the data, but it's not summarized into star schema, and that's what is needed to feed these dashboards. So think of it like, Birst is a toolkit, like similar to Excel. With Excel, you buy Excel, you don't get standard pre-built spreadsheets. You have to build them yourself. Birst is very similar. It's a toolkit. It comes with everything you need to build this stuff, but you got to get at the data, and you got to get at the data in the right format. Those interfaces to your ERP systems are not pre-built into Birst. You've got to figure out how to do that integration. And the results are based on, your knowledge of the ERP database. How do you then link that to Birst and create this star schema, and then be able to build out the things that are needed, the development skills within Birst itself. So ERPs are great. They do their job. They've been doing their job for 40, 50 years. They're great at capturing the data and managing, inventory and order management and shipping and all of that stuff. You can get lists and lists of data, but it's in really excruciating detail, as it needs to be, because it's an ERP system. It's all transactions based. Nothing's really summarized. You've got to go through this extract, translate, and load process, the dreaded ETL, to get that data out, summarize it, and report it like we were talking about. Traditionally it's been done in Excel. So what ATX brings is it does that ETL work for you. Okay, it is able to read the database, the XA database, and create what is needed in your business intelligence tool. So it reads at a metadata level. I don't want to get too technical, but within Integrator, there's what they call a metadata level that describes all of the objects within Integrator, within your XA system. All of those objects have attributes and they've got relationships to other objects. So what ATX does is it can read that metadata data and auto create usable star schema for Birst. And that word auto create is about 2 years worth of R&D on Guide's part. That is a short word, but it has taken a lot of R&D to be able to do what it delivers today. Because even if you've got custom objects that you've built in Integrator, as long as it's been done in Integrator, we can read that metadata and we can put that information as well into a format that Birst can use. Okay, it's really, that star schema is really the definition of all those links that combine multiple files and fields into usable objects. Birst doesn't understand IDF objects, but we've got to get it from there into the format that it does understand for it to really be an effective tool. So that's the transformation. That's what ATX provides. It'll transform your data, your relationships, your integrator objects into star schema, and it's only then that your BI tool can truly deliver what the promise is, real-time drill down, drill around capability in graphical formats, trends, because now we've got it in dimensions of data, things like time, territories, product lines, summarized in a way that it's now usable data. And that's what ATX does. It translates that in XA ERP data into usable star schema. And it's tremendous value. In fact, we've done demos where we've taken a customer's database and in a period of time ran it through ATX, and we're able to show them their own data back in these types of dashboards and so forth. So very powerful. So in summary, ATX does is takes your Infor objects, converts them to BI data. We do have some pre-built dashboards that are included, I think 4 or 5 of them, and we're continuing to build more out that you get with the purchase of the product. It literally saves man years of development hours if you were to try to create this star schema yourself. And this is really probably the biggest reason why BI initiatives fail to reach their upfront goals. It's very easy in a demo for a salesperson to just click a button and show you how magical it all works and so forth, but that's just not the reality of the work that has to go in behind the scenes to get to that point. What you get is a query for every IDF business object and all those relationships built and the code files resolved, which is a big deal in and of itself to get those standardized. And that results in about a 75% reduction in the time you need in Birst to develop what you want as far as custom analytics and KPIs and dashboards and so forth. And it includes all your custom integrator business objects. So really the bottom line is you can begin modeling, you can begin building dashboards in Birst right away if you utilize ATX to get it into a format that Birst can use. And that's really the power and the value in it. So I did want to close. I stole some slides from Rick Altano from one of his slide presentations or sales presentations, because he does a really good job of putting words into pictures, much better than I do. So I stole these just to kind of close out here. This is representing the purchasing module in XA, and what ATX has done is it's converted those objects into star schema, which is what we're going to see here as this builds out. But there's probably 50 or 60 different business objects represented by these dots around the circle in purchasing alone. And then there's a bunch of relationships between all of those objects. From that, we just look at a snapshot of this. You've got all these lines are different relationships, different ways you can get to data and summarize it and so forth. So here's just 4 objects in that little corner and all the little ins and outs, and there's literally thousands of these, and even more so if you look at the entire XA database in its entirety. So if we just focus on a single object here, like purchase order item, here's all of the relationships in and out and so forth. And this is the star schema stuff that ATX builds for you from the integrator platform. Another way of looking at it, you look at your ERP system, you've got objects, and you double click objects and you see lists of data, and you can right click and you can drill to related data. And that's all well and good if you're looking at it through PowerLink or NetLink, but we've got to get that data into a format that Birst can use. Again, just a graphical representation of what ATX delivers. And once you've got it in Birst, you can put it on tablets and smartphones and see it in different formats. So again, that's just functionality provided right out of the box from Birst. And then lastly, I love this slide. I think it does a great job of kind of summarizing everything we've been talking about, and it relates to everyone. Hopefully you've got running water at your house, and think of it as ATX is the plumbing to get you that water, and Birst is the actual running water. So you go and you turn a spigot on, you're expecting water to come out. You don't care how that water got there, but it got there. And behind the scenes, there was a lot of work to get that water from its source to that spigot. So when you turn it on, it's flowing. So that's really what it is. ATX provides that star schema so that Birst can supply the dashboards in a similar fashion. So with that, that's really all I had at this point. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me, Brad, or your sales rep, or anyone on the guide team, and we'll get you whatever information. Just as a reminder, we do have a save the date here for the next XA webinar series on enterprise financials. That'll be Rick Altano and Al Stein, I believe, delivering that one on March 25th. And you should be getting some communication here in the next week or so related to that one. So truly appreciate everyone's attention and attendance today. I realize this format's not conducive at all to any kind of interaction, but we'll do our best through the Q&A form to answer any questions, and certainly meet with you personally if any of these are of interest. So Brad, did you have anything to closing?
No, thank you very much, Randy, for the presentation, the great overview of the some of the key guide software products, and thank you for all the attendees. We had quite a full registration and attendance today. Just a reminder that if you have any questions, you can send them straight to Randy. Utilize the chat function, and then the recording of this will be distributed to everybody that's registered, and also be available on the guide website in a few days. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.